Oh, hello. I didn't see you there. I'm just here, drinking wine, living my life in my disgusting bedroom. I just feel like, because it's my birthday month, so I can drink wine when I want. Also, I don't even remember the last time I've had wine. You guys have been requesting another story time about my downstairs neighbor. Since we're in our last couple days of living in this apartment, I figured, why not just wrap up the joy that has been the last 4 years with some more stories of our downstairs neighbor. It just seems appropriate. I think I'm just gonna kind of bundle a few items together. One of the things that really gets under my skin about the downstairs neighbor, apart from her existence in general, is the fact that she doesn't know how to park her oversized vehicle. Literally, every single time that she parks her vehicle, if these are the straight lines, she parks like this. She parks in 3 different parking spots all the time. And what really pissed me off one day was when she parked so close to my vehicle that Doug had to crawl in from the passenger side and took almost 5 minutes to back the car out without scratching it against hers. And this happens all the time, so much so that I started collecting a photo album of her horrific parking, and every time she did it I would send a picture to our office, our front office. I think just kind of to get me to shut up, and also because she's an idiot, they ended up sending a police officer who, I think he lives in our apartment or something. But yeah, they ended up sending an officer to her apartment to tell her that she needed to start parking correctly. I mean, not that that's a huge thing, but it's annoying if it happens every now and then, but it infuriates me when it's literally every single day of her life. If you can't park and drive a vehicle that size, then why did you get it? But yeah, that's just little things, the day-to-day things between that and slamming the door. But her vehicle did break down, and luckily she hasn't been able to go anywhere for 3 weeks. So we haven't had to deal with it lately. Let's move on to the second time that we called the cops on her. So, as I mentioned, she has 2 young boys. I want to say they're maybe around the ages of 6 and 9-ish, somewhere in there. And this apartment building, the whole complex and everything, if I remember correctly, was built about 20 to 25 years ago, which you would think that they had better construction back then, but they didn't. And these walls are paper thin, and you can hear every single thing that anyone says or does. I think I'm on the same peeing schedule as the person who lives in the next building over it. Always hear them flush their toilet at the same time that I do. There was this one night, and I don't know if it was on a weekend, I can't remember exactly, but one or both of her kids was kicking a ball against the inside wall of her apartment, and I'm not exaggerating. This went on for about an hour and a half. Now, like I said, you can literally hear everything that happens in these apartments. That ball, every time they kicked it against the wall, was rattling our entire apartment. I mean, you guys have seen Prim. You know how fat she is. She was nearly ready to keel over and die from a heart attack because of how terrified she was of this constant banging. And since our apartment wouldn't do anything about it, they're like, well, we're not hearing anything, so there's nothing we can do. The apartment wouldn't do anything about it because they weren't personally hearing the noises. Well, I'm sorry, if you're getting a noise complaint or if someone's got an issue, isn't it your job to solve it? Anyway, so I decided to take the next best step, which most people might think would be politely knocking on the door and asking if they could please stop whatever the fuck it is that they are doing. But no, it's me, and I'm always going to take things one step further. So what I decided to do, and also this was after the initial incident, you know? So I'm in our apartment, just freaking out to Doug, telling him, you know, I want to go down there, I want to scream at her, probably said I want to punch her in the face. I don't really know. Anyway, I didn't do any of those things. Instead, I called 911. I know this is terrible, but I did it. And I told them that there was really loud noises coming from the apartment below us. And I specifically said, I do not want to be involved in this in any way. I don't want my name being brought up. I don't want anyone coming to our apartment to discuss this. I just want the situation to stop. But what I had said was that the apartment below us had a history of domestic violence, which technically it did. And apparently that was incorrect of me to say, because not only did 6 cop cars show up, but they came to our front door. And like, now she knows that it's me who clearly has a problem with her, and she's probably figuring out that we're the ones who initially had called the cops on her, you know, however many months ago. So, and I wasn't prepared. I had like no bra on. I'm in my bathrobe. I'm so tired. It's nighttime. I don't want to deal with this. And I specifically said, don't talk to me. You know, what do? They come talk to me. Anyway, so the situation gets resolved and the cops leave, and they tell her, like, you got to stop making that noise. You're bothering everyone. And Doug and I are just talking about it like, oh my God, I can't believe that this happened. I can't believe all these cops showed up. Doug was mad at me because of the terminology that I used. And anyway, so maybe like 15 minutes goes by after the cops had left, and we have a knock on the door, and I'm like, maybe they're back. Maybe the cops had a question or something. And I look through the peephole, and it's her. It is the downstairs neighbor, and she is knocking on our door. And you guys, I'm 5'2", and I'm so weak. I couldn't do anything to anyone. And I talk a big game, and so I'm like, oh my God, Doug, she's at the door. And I look at him, and I was like, you handle this. And I ran, and I hid in our bedroom while he had to listen to her yelling at him. And she is so stupid. She said to Doug, in her snotty ass attitude, sorry if my kids are too loud for you. Sorry if my kids are too obnoxious. Sorry if they're bothering you. I can guarantee you, sweetheart, that we were not the only ones bothered by the ridiculous noises that were coming from your apartment. Do you have any idea of the amount of complaints that are filed against you and every little asshole that lives in your house? Because it's a lot. I know it because they told me. Because I complain a lot. I'm really good at complaining. But really, these are all so minor compared to the stupidest thing she ever did in her life. I think it was last summer, maybe. And like 2 weeks before this specific incident had happened, there was something wrong with all the fire alarms in our building and then the 2 buildings next to us. And they just kept going off, and no one knew if there was actually a fire because like our buildings were the only ones with the alarm going off. So the fire department is showing up, everyone's trying to figure it out. So we're just assuming like there's an issue. So like 2 weeks goes by, and actually Doug and I had been saying, you know, what would we even do if there was a fire? Because the bed we used to have, like, we couldn't get the cats out from underneath it because whenever they're scared, they hide under the bed. So anyway, we're talking about this. Well, all of a sudden, it's probably around like dinner time, and I'm hearing like one fire alarm, not the whole building, just one. And we're hearing this noise and we're like, is it happening again? Or is there some problem? You know, we couldn't figure out what was going on. So we opened the front door, like we definitely hear it, but we don't necessarily see anything going on. And I'm like, okay, Doug, we need to get the cats. We have to get out of here. Obviously there's an issue. I'm pretty sure we should probably get out. So maybe a minute or two more goes by and we're still hearing these alarms, and we're starting to notice now that people are sticking their heads out of their apartments and trying to see, hey, like what's going on? Does everyone else hear that? Well, again, we're directly above this idiot, and we look and now we're seeing all the smoke pouring out of her apartment, and you can hear all this water running because now all the sprinkler systems in her apartment are going off and flooding her entire apartment. So I'm like, we have to get the cats. We have to get out. We're right above her. Our apartment's going to go up in flames, and I'm freaking out. Well, Doug runs downstairs, and a couple other guys from the other apartments, actually. This fucking idiot. Which, I'll tell you what happened, and then I'll tell you what I think. She had been cooking dinner, like frying chicken or something, I think she said. And somehow she started a grease fire. Fine, I understand you can set grease fires, but we'll get to it. Anyway, so now this fire is going on. There's smoke and everything happening, and she just takes her kids and leaves the apartment, which yes, any normal person would do. But it's a grease fire, and she never turned the stove off. The fire's still going. There's water shooting out of all the sprinklers. There's literally like 1.5 feet of standing water in her apartment. But what didn't make sense to me, I'm sorry, if my apartment or anything was on fire, I would be like screaming and crying and panicking because that's who I am as a person. I realize not everyone is like me, but her and her kids just walked out of the apartment like it was no big deal. They didn't care. They weren't concerned. They weren't acting in any way like, oh my God, this is a really big deal. We could have fucking killed everyone that lives in this building. They're just standing there. So Doug and a couple other guys ran into the apartment to turn off the stove and try to, you know, extinguish whatever they could. Eventually the fire department shows up and everyone's trying to, you know, literally just shovel the water out the front door because there's so much water in this apartment. But okay, every single apartment in this building is set up the exact same way. And I know this because we used to be friends with the downstairs neighbor, like a different one. And I went into her apartment one time, it's the exact identical layout. So what didn't make sense to us is that where the stove is to where the sprinkler is, there's no possible way that something on the stovetop would have triggered that sprinkler to go off. You know what I'm saying? Do you see what I'm saying here? And they were so calm. So what I personally feel like is that she did it on purpose for the money, for the insurance money. And I know I shouldn't think those things, but that's the kind of person that she is. And it's funny too, because I mean, the fire trucks and everyone, they were there for a while trying to take care of the situation. And they had everyone get out of the apartments and like everything was fine. They were able to stop everything before anything happened to like our apartment or anyone else around. So, but all of like, who, I don't remember exactly who was all there, but you know, like all the firefighters were kind of standing in a group, like discussing everything and like looking at it. And they all had these just kind of questionable looks on their face. Like, this doesn't seem right. Do you know what I'm saying? And I think everyone was on the same page that she probably did this on purpose because she's a psycho, a literal psycho. They continued to live in the apartment. Do you remember when I said there was 1.5 feet standing water in that apartment? Like, all the furniture was ruined. Everything was ruined. Everything was destroyed. And they continued to live in it. I don't know. Maybe I don't know enough about like water and mold and everything like that, but To me, that seems wrong. And they never got in trouble for anything. Ever. In fact, they almost got rewarded because what happened was the apartment that's directly across from them on the lower level turned into a showroom apartment. So they had to make the idiot's apartment look very presentable because initially there's always alcohol and like food and trash thrown all over the front door. The blinds are ripped to shreds because her monster children just don't give a shit about anything. It just always looks like a crap hole. And instead, they got rewarded with everything in their apartment being completely replaced, everything brand new. But to top it all off, so a new company purchased our apartment complex and is renovating everything. They're spending like $35 million to finish everything, make it really, really nice. And in order to, if you live here already and you want to move into the brand new apartments, you have to have the owner of the apartment come into your current place and see how you've treated everything, how you've taken care of everything, you know, because they're not going to put a piece of trash into this high-end, brand new, like, luxury apartment. So they came in, they were doing our inspection, and we started talking, and they were like, oh yeah, so how long have you lived here? Why do you want to move? Blah, blah, blah. And they had no idea of any of the complaints or anything that has ever happened with the downstairs neighbor. So don't you worry. I informed them of everything, and I made very, very sure that she will never live in this apartment complex or anywhere near me as long as I live, ever, ever again. Thank you guys for hanging out with me and watching this video, and I will see you in the next one.